You ever notice how Japanese can sound so uniquely polite or incredibly direct? A huge secret to that nuance is just one tiny word, I. In English, it's I or me. Done. But if you try this one-size-fits-all approach in Japan, you'll end up sounding like a textbook robot, or worse, completely offend someone. We're gonna dive deep into a dozen fascinating ways to say I or me in Japanese. We're gonna start with the everyday essentials and get progressively wilder, covering everything from formal business, country dialect, samurai, and even something that only emperors can say. Let's kick things off with absolute must-knows. These first few are your go-to words for I or me in almost any situation. First up, we have watashi. It's the most standard, polite, and generally safest way to say I. You'll hear everyone use watashi in formal situations. Think business meetings, public speaking, or talking to strangers or even your superiors. And for women, it's pretty much the default in most situations, whether it's casual or formal. And men can also use it, especially when they want to sound more humble, polite, or reserved. Think of it like someone being very considerate of their listener. If you're ever in doubt, then watashi is your best friend. And next up on the docket, we have boku. Now this one is almost exclusively used by guys, particularly younger men and boys. When adult men use boku, it gives off a vibe that's humble, gentle, and polite, but still more informal than watashi. It's what you'd use with your friends, family, or people that you're comfortable with. You'll sometimes see tomboyish female characters in anime or manga using boku for a very specific personality trait, but in real life, it's overwhelmingly male.
Shigeru-kun, 僕は未来人だ.
Next up is ore. Now this one is also almost exclusively masculine, but it's on the opposite end of the formality spectrum from watashi for men. Ore is super casual, assertive, and can even sound a bit tough or confident. It's what guys use with their really close friends, family members, or anyone else they have a very familiar relationship with, or those they perceive with lower status. Big warning though, if you use ore with a stranger, your boss, or someone who's above you in age or status, you risk sounding rude, arrogant, or like you're trying to pick a fight. It's all about context here. Last but not least for our essentials is atashi. This one is pretty much exclusively feminine, and it's a more casual, softer, and often cuter version of watashi for women. You hear young women especially using atashi when chatting with friends, family, or in relaxed settings. And it's generally not used in formal business settings where watashi would be more appropriate. Alright, we've got the basics down, but let's move on to some pronouns with a bit more of a specific context, whether that's super politeness or some regional flavor. First off in this section is watashi, which is basically just watashi's super formal, ultra polite elder sibling. This is used in extremely formal settings. Think official speeches, high stakes business presentations, or when you need to show the utmost humility and respect. And this one's gender neutral. Using watashi in a casual setting would sound incredibly stiff, awkward, and overly humble to the point of sounding sarcastic. It's usually a conscious choice to elevate the level of politeness significantly.
Watashi?
Watashi?
Boku? Ore?
Moving on, we have uchi, and this one literally means inside or my home / group. Uchi is particularly popular in the Kansai region of Japan, think Osaka and Kyoto, especially among women in informal settings. Its usage is spreading, so you'll hear it used elsewhere too. It gives off a very familiar in-group feeling, as if you're referring to yourself as part of your inner circle, very casual and friendly.
Daddy, uchi saki ni kaeru-chan.
Next up is jibun. It literally translates to self, and this one's gender neutral. You'll often hear jibun being used when referring to someone doing something by themselves or reflecting on their own actions. It's also quite common in disciplined environments like military or sports, where it conveys a sense of personal responsibility or directness. Interestingly, in some Kansai dialects, jibun can actually be used to mean you, which can be incredibly confusing if you're not aware of the context. And finally for this section, we have washi. This one is almost exclusively used by older men, conveying a sense of authority, wisdom, and even a slightly gruff character. You'll hear this one more commonly in Western Japan or certain regional dialects. It can sound informal, familiar, or even a bit condescending to younger people depending on the speaker's tone and relationship. It's definitely not a pronoun for a younger person to be using unless they're playing a character. Alright, let's stray away from the mainstream stuff. You may recognize these next few ones from anime, manga, or historical dramas, but you should definitely not try using these in everyday conversations unless you're trying to sound intentionally funny or theatrical. First up is wagahai. This pronoun screams arrogance and self-importance. It's extremely formal and archaic. Its most famous appearance is in Natsume Sosaki's Wagahai wa Neko de Aru, narrated by a very intellectual and disdainful feline. You'll hear fictional characters, typically villains, eccentric professors, or non-human entities who consider themselves superior, using this pronoun to show off their inflated ego. Do not use this one in real life unless you want everyone to stare. So when you hear someone declare Wagahai wa Neko de Aru, you know that you're dealing with someone with profound self-regard. I mean, look at this guy. Look at how pampered he is. Next, we have ora. This is a highly regional dialect pronoun, often associated with rural areas, particularly the Tohoku region in northern Japan. It gives off more of a simple and rustic image, or maybe rough around the edges and down to earth. While it is primarily used by men, you may also hear it be used by older women in very specific contexts. And the most famous user, none other than Goku from Dragon Ball Z. If you're not from one of these specific regions, or you're not cosplaying Goku at Comic-Con, then using ora could mark you as a foreigner trying to imitate a very specific, almost stereotypical character, so be careful. Okay, we're gonna go full history channel here. These last few pronouns are found almost exclusively in ancient texts, historical dramas, or very specific, untouchable historical figures. First up is sessha, and if you watch samurai dramas, then you'll definitely recognize this one. Sessha was a very humble way for a samurai or a warrior to refer to themselves. It's polite within their historical context, showing deference even while carrying a sword. Outside of a historical setting or play acting, it would sound incredibly out of place and probably very strange. Now this next one is temae, and it's actually a bit of a linguistic temae is actually a bit of a linguistic trap. Historically, it could be used as a humble first-person pronoun, a very deferential I. However, in modern Japanese, especially in its derived form, teme, it has become one of the rudest and most aggressive ways to say you. It's a fighting word. So while it technically does have an I origin, using it in today's world would be a massive social blunder, unless you're trying to pick a fight. Just be aware of its historical context, and unless you're getting ready to throw hands, I would stray away from using this one. Now this one is all exclusive. Chin, and it has only one user in all of Japan. This pronoun is reserved entirely for the Emperor of Japan. No one else, past or present, has ever used this word to refer to themselves. So unless you're the actual emperor, then this one's just for historical knowledge. So if you somehow hear this word out in the wild, you're either listening to a historical recording or you're sitting in the presence of the emperor himself. And topping off our archaic deep dive is yo. This one also signifies immense power and a high status. Yo was used by feudal lords, high-ranking nobles, and other very powerful figures in ancient Japan. It carries a sense of authority and self-importance, but overtly less arrogant than wagahai. Again, purely for historical context. You might hear a powerful daimyo in a drama proclaim, "Yo ni sakarao ka." Before we get to the ultimate secret, I know I promised crazy, so let's get into one that you see all the time in fiction but is not used in real life. So, you know ore, our casual, assertive, masculine pronoun. Well, imagine if ore went to college, graduated, and convinced itself it was a god. Then you would get ore-sama. This is ore, with the highly respectful honorific sama tacked onto it, and together it creates an effect of extreme narcissism, arrogance, and self-deification. It's purely for fictional characters, villains, princes who think they're better than everyone, or comically self-important individuals. Using this in real life would just be a choice, and not a good one. Now, after all of that, the most common way to say I or me in Japanese, it's called omission. That's right, most of the time you're not going to actually be saying I or me. Japanese is a highly contextual language, meaning that if the pronoun makes sense from the verb ending or the context, then you can just simply omit it. Overusing pronouns such as watashi when the pronoun's already obvious can make you sound like a textbook.
これはあなたのペンですか?
はい、それは私のペンです。あれ?私はニークラアンです。
Instead of saying 私はご飯を食べます, you can drop the watashi and just say ご飯を食べます. It's already obvious that you are the one doing the eating. So there you have it. From the polite watashi to the imperial chin, the world of Japanese pronouns for I is incredibly rich and full of nuance. It's not just about what word you use, but also what statement you're making about yourself and your relationship to others. While learning these pronouns could prove helpful, knowing when not to use them is arguably even more crucial. Speaking of what not to do, if you want to avoid some of the biggest pitfalls when it comes to language learning, my friend and I break down 5 language learning myths in this video right here. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to leave a like, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. See ya.